What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Tailgate Discussions. Alex, it has been a long time since we've had a episode. How you doing, man?
I've been great, man. So ready for this college football season. We're just a few days away. How about you?
Yeah, I have to say the same. I mean, it's been a whirlwind the last couple of months for me. But I finally have a job that I enjoy, and I'm excited about it. But most importantly, I'm excited about the upcoming college football season. There is a lot to unpack heading into this week's game. And
Yeah,
we're going to
just
start with your article that you released earlier, the Phantom Sports Preseason Top 25.
yeah, in just 3 days away, we're gonna get the college football season underway in Dublin, Ireland, of all places. So Georgia Tech and FSU are gonna be kicking the season off. And what are your guys' predictions for that game? Anything surprising, or are you going with the chalk?
I don't think anything crazy is going to happen. I think it's just going to be, I don't know, the crowd might get crazy, if anything, just because it's a different country, different atmosphere. We haven't seen college football in another country yet, like we have seen for the NFL.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't see
interested to
anything
see
like,
how the schools are going to travel for that game. Like, how
yeah.
how many students slash regular fans are we actually going to see there, as opposed to like tourists and Ireland people from
hmm
Ireland.
Outside
But
of that, I don't
yeah,
think the game's going to go crazy. I think it'll be a regular game. I think the spreads are fine.
yeah. I looked at the spread and it's FSU minus 10.5, which I would agree with. I think that's pretty fair. But week zero games always have like a chance to be sloppy and just a total mess. And I think when you're also traveling overseas as well, it could throw some things into it. Maybe jet lag. Or, I don't know how long ago they might already have been there for a couple of weeks, but just being in that new environment could throw everybody off a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm still gonna take FSU to win. I just think it could actually be closer than most people expect. I could see them beating Georgia Tech beating the spread.
Yeah, I think the spread is fine. Florida State minus 10.5. But to what you're saying, I mean, you have to think that, for a game, even if it's week zero, a game this caliber, with these being college players, that they would have be there for at least a couple days, so that way they don't have to experience that jet lag.
Hmm.
But as far as the game itself goes, yeah, I think the spread is fine. Um, I think Florida State's going to come out, and show why they should have been in the college football playoff last year as well.
I don't know
I'm
if we'll go
I'm
that
I'm
far,
down
but
on FSU this year, and you'll see that on this list. But I think it's going to be an interesting game because it's two ACC opponents going at it in week zero, which you don't really get to see. Normally, you'll get a couple of out of conference games before they begin ACC play, but this is a pretty important game right off the bat. So Georgia Tech has a chance to shock the world, and FSU has a chance to tell everybody that they still belong and they're going to be making a run for the expanded playoff this year.
For
Another
sure.
thing also, I wanted to ask you guys, are you going to be going to any college football games this year?
I am. As of right now, I am going to the Ducks versus University of Idaho
What week
on
is that going to
August
be?
31st.
August 31st. Nice. So it's the opening week. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I was really, really looking to go to the Miami UF game on August 31st, but I wasn't able to get tickets to that one. But me and my sister are going to be heading over to the UF Kentucky game on homecoming. I'm not sure what week that is. I think it's around October, but really excited for that. So hopefully we can take down Kentucky finally. It's just for some reason they've had our number like the last couple of seasons. But how about you, Shane?
yeah, I am planning on going to the Boise State Washington State game on September 28th because I'm out here in Boise, Idaho, so there's none of the big schools. It's kind of a big deal that WSU's coming over here.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, I'd go to the Boise State Oregon game, but I think that one's going to be a little too far for me to make work in time until the game happens. So I'm gonna shoot for the WSU Boise State game.
Well, you might like this list that I made because Boise State made it. So
I
like
love
them
it.
a lot this year.
Go Broncos.
I was actually looking to go to a Big Ten conference game this year, but I don't know if you guys have seen the prices for those.
I haven't.
That's probably
it's
insane.
a dramatic increase from what a Pac-12 game was last year.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's because you got bigger schools coming to Oregon and Washington instead of Colorado.
Yes.
You've got the Ohio States and the Michigans.
Yeah,
Like, that's a
considering Oregon
marquee
holds like
matchup.
what 50 or 60,000 in their stadium, that ticket just got a lot more exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the article that you got that you posted earlier, where do we want to start with that?
Let's start from 25 and work our way down. Yeah.
Okay.
And there might be some more surprises probably towards the end of this list as opposed to the beginning. So I think we start at 25
Okay.
with Liberty. That's who I have there.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think that that's a good spot for Liberty. I mean, they showed everybody, that they can compete with the best teams last year. I mean, obviously Oregon, demolished them in the playoff game, or in the bowl game, I should say. But I think Liberty has a chance to really show how dynamic Caden Salter really is. And then you mentioned him and Quentin Cooley together as one of the most dynamic rushing attacks in a backcourt. I think that is going to end up showing to be true here in the next year.
Yeah, I've been going up against them with one of my one-star dynasty schools in college football, and they just hammer me. I think those two are both like 90 overalls in the game, but I guarantee that offense is going to be just as good in real life. And they are one of the two non-Power 5 teams that I have in this list, and so they will have a chance to win their conference and have a bid for the college football playoff. So that's going to be exciting. Let's move on to number 24, where I have a pretty big surprise. I have the Sooners here. They're a lot better of a team than what they'll finish, like what this ranking has them at. I would agree with that, but they just happen to like have the toughest schedule in the nation behind Florida. So I could really see them going unranked, and I think we're going to be due for a lot of surprises in the SEC this year. And I think Oklahoma might be one of those teams that just has a surprisingly down year because of how saturated the conference got. And if you just look at their schedule, they're going through the meat grinder. I think they have 6 ranked teams that they're going against, and I think their final 3 games of the season are on the road against ranked teams. So it's going to be brutal for them. They have an unproven QB starting, 5-star Jackson Arnold, but I think there's just too many question marks for me to like really be sold on Oklahoma right now.
Yeah, that's
That
a
one
fair
was
statement.
Go ahead, Dakota.
I was just going to say that's a fair statement. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a surprise, and I was shocked to see that you had them this low. Or that I should say we had them this low, but I think the Sooners are going to struggle this next year with Jackson Arnold in his rookie season. I mean, a lot of rookie season quarterbacks tend to struggle.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I was genuinely surprised by that. I fully admittedly have not read the article yet. I know, bad owner me, but
Shame.
so all of these are gonna be a surprise, technically, and that one really threw me off. So
Yeah, Oklahoma's, they could sneak, a couple of those wins that they probably weren't supposed to get. I mean, they could just be much better than I expected. They have a great defense, great receiving corps, but I don't know if their QB is going to be the guy to win them enough games.
yeah.
Let's move on to number 23, where I have your Broncos, Boise State.
Yes, sir. Go
and
Broncos.
they made some headlines recently. They announced Maddox Madsen to open their season over the 5-star transfer, right, that they got, Malachi Nelson.
Malachi Nelson.
Was he a transfer or a recruit for them? I can't remember.
He was a transfer from USC.
Okay. Yeah, transfer from USC.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I think he'll start by week 3. If I'm being completely honest, it's just that Maddox has been in the system for a couple of years now,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think he's just got to get a little more acclimated to it all. And first year head coach at Boise State, and then I mean you've got Ashton Genty. I think he's probably the best running back in the country right now,
Mm-hmm.
or one of the best running backs in the country.
He could be
Dude's just an
first
absolute
running back
freak.
to get the Heisman in a long time, potentially.
Yeah, he's a freak,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I'm very excited for this season. I think obviously I think we're gonna win the Mountain West, and I think we'll make the playoff.
Yeah. Madsen I don't know if he started or how many he started, but he played in 9 games last year. Had almost 1,200 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But to your point, I think Nelson might just end up slotting in as the starting quarterback at some point in the season. But I think whoever is going to be their starter is just going to have a monster year. I don't really think it matters who's going to be there. So
I think the Broncos are gonna start easing back into their super dominant days, back like the Fiesta Bowl 2007 and
that would be a lot of fun.
Those days.
Yeah, so you're going to have to mark that game against Oregon on your calendars, which is, I don't know which week that is. I think it's an earlier season game, around week 4 or 5.
It's week 2.
Week 2, okay. So that's going to be a huge test for them earlier in the season, but I'm sure after that the slate gets a lot easier. And, yeah, go ahead.
That one's also going to be a test for Oregon because Boise State always has Oregon's number.
Yeah, it could be a trip. Oregon could trip up while they're focusing heavier on their Big Ten schedule. I could certainly see Boise State making it a game and surprising people. But if they're going to be a playoff team, if they want that bid, I think they do have to show up against Oregon. They can't look like cupcakes. Like they can't just let Oregon walk all over them. They're not going to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Liberty's going to get in over them if they don't. So
I do like the pick of Boise State being here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you said it best in the article, Alex. Boise State is our favorite non-Power 5 team to finish in the top 25 and secure the spot for the college football playoff. Ashton Genty, he's a Heisman hopeful. And like Shane said, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if Malachi Nelson, which he probably should be expected to start at some point this year, can take Boise State to that next level.
all right, number 22, I have another SEC team, Texas A&M. Texas A&M finally got rid of Jimbo, which actually surprised me. I thought he was just going to be locked up forever there. But they haven't gotten much love this offseason, which probably deservedly so. But I really love the hire, and I still think they have a super talented team. After they lost most of it in the portal, I still think they have plenty of good players still there. Recently, they lost their best pass rusher to, I don't know what injury it was, but he had a season-ending injury during training camp, Reuben Owens. So that stinks, but they still have a really, really good pass rush with Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner. And they're going to have Connor Wegman back at QB, so, you know, we'll see what they can do. I think they're going to be in the thick of the SEC, though, and they'll be competitive.
I definitely agree. I do think Texas A&M is going to be back into the thick of things in the SEC, but it's going to be interesting to see what they can do in that first season with Mike Elko.
Yeah, they went 7-6 last year, so I'm expecting them, I think, to win maybe 8 games. Like, I do think they're going to improve on their win total, but with their schedule, like, they might just improve, like, on the field, but it might not show on the results. They still might win 7 games because of the SEC being so tough. But I think that it was a really, really good hire for them, and I expect to see a quick turnaround.
I will say this season it's going to be tricky to really predict what their record is going to be. I mean, you can never really predict that kind of thing with a first season head coach. He should be able to get them better than 7-6, but it leaves some room for, you know, a fallback or some extreme growth.
Yeah, and they have a surprising opening uh, opening season game against Notre Dame on August 31st. So we'll know right away what they're made of when they play them. Let's move on to Kansas at 21, Kansas Jayhawks. So a lot of people probably might have expected Kansas State to be on the list, but I think Kansas is going to be the best team in that state. And they're led by their quarterback and running back, Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal. Those are the two names you're going to want to remember if you haven't heard them already. And if they can both stay healthy, Kansas is going to be a really tough out in the Big 12, which is surprisingly deep this year.
Yeah, with the additions that the Big 12 has made, it's definitely going to be a deep one. I'm actually surprised that you had Kansas on list instead of Kansas State.
Yeah, I liked Kansas a lot last year, but Jalen Daniels was banged up for a couple of their games last year. But when he was on the field, like earlier in the season, if you even remember, he was like kind of in the Heisman race. But then he got banged up and he missed a couple of games, and they went to a 9-4 year, which was still really good for them. But if everything comes together for the Jayhawks, they have like a really really favorable schedule. If you take a look at it, they don't have to play many tough teams, so you could easily see them going. I could easily see them going to double-digit wins.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to number 20, we have the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa's defense has always been known to keep them in most games, and they're going to be losing their top player in Cooper DeJean to the NFL, but they did return 10 starters on defense. I looked it up, and they hired a new offensive coordinator. So the story, like here, is their offensive coordinator was the son of the head coach, and as we all know, their offense sucked for like a long time. The dad finally fired his son and hired like a competent offensive coordinator. So hopefully, like, I mean, there's no chance it won't get like any better. Like, it has to get better. It was like the worst. They averaged like 15 points per game last year, right? So
it became a meme.
yeah, it was like they were
How bad they
sabotaging
got.
the team. He kept his son on the staff for way too long,
Really bad.
and it was obvious that it was just bias. But he
Yeah.
probably saved face. It was probably either his son goes or they both go. Like, that's what I bet boosters were being like. But
Probably.
they're still a great team. They went 10-4 last year. And they're another team. I looked at their schedule. They somehow avoid like every good team in the Big Ten. They don't have to play Oregon. They don't have to play Michigan. They don't have to play Penn State. All they have to do is play Ohio State, and then the rest of their teams are just middle of the road Big Ten teams. So I think they have a really good chance this year to like be a dark horse in that conference.
Well, good for them.
Once Washington gets better, and once they have to face Oregon as well, I think that's going to be a true test for how good this defense really is. I mean, you're talking two offensive powerhouses.
Agreed. Let's move on to number 19, LSU Tigers. I was really not really sure where to put LSU. Kind of a lot of these SEC teams, to be honest, but they're another team I kind of think just lost too much production to the NFL, where I think they're going to have another great season. They finished the year 10-3. Probably could have done a little better with that when you see the offense that they had last year. But their defense was like outside of the top 100 last season. I don't know if they've done enough to improve that coming into this year. They have to face a pretty rough SEC schedule, and then they have a random game against USC to start the season. So that's going to be a pretty exciting one. Two really good offenses, but that could be a game where they slip up. And I said in the article, if they lose that game in week 1, that could kind of decide where their season goes from there. I think that might be their most important game on the schedule. They really need that one more than USC needs it, I think.
Agreed. I think they definitely did lose a lot of production to the NFL. I mean, you're talking Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. They don't really have much left at that point. So a downfall is definitely expected.
Yeah, they're going to need some new faces, some transfers that come and make a name for themselves. And after LSU, I have FSU at 18. So after a really good yet disappointing 2023, I think a lot of people, when I was looking at preseason rankings, like a lot of people think the FSU or Miami are going to take the ACC again, but I don't think FSU is going to do it this year. They don't have they lose so much production from last year on defense and offense that I don't think they really did enough to stay afloat. And they have to open the season early against Georgia Tech in Dublin, as we already mentioned, which would scare me as an FSU fan. I feel like that's a bit of a trap game. And then they have games against Florida, Miami, and Notre Dame, so that won't make it any easier for them. But what do you think about FSU in the ACC? Do you think they're going to take it again?
Honestly, no, I don't. I think after last season's collapse, I mean, I shouldn't say collapse. It was a great year, but also disappointing by not making the playoff. I think that's going to send them down into a whirlwind. They've gotten DJ Ugalele, but I honestly don't think that he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in
he's certainly a downgrade from Travis. He's a big downgrade in my opinion. I never really liked him that much. He was okay at Oregon State. That was behind a really good rushing offense with Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sold on FSU. And as a Gator fan, like you would expect that. But they lost so many guys to the NFL. I think they had 10 guys get drafted. And most of these guys that they got for that championship team, like that team was returning a bunch of production from the season before, and they added a bunch of transfers. So like it was like a perfect recipe for them to take over the ACC. This year's team is not the same as last year's, not even close. So I think they're going to show that, and I think teams like Notre Dame and Miami will really, really challenge them. They're lucky they don't have to play Clemson, because I think Clemson will beat them.
Yeah.
Probably.
All right, moving on to number 17. I have the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They're going to be looking to get back in the Big 12 championship with Texas now out of there. And it's going to be Ollie Gordon's final year. So I don't have much to say about Oklahoma State. Frankly, I don't know much about them. But I looked up their schedule, and their biggest matchup's going to come against Utah in Week 4. And if they can take down Utah, who I have as the top team in their conference, maybe they can make some noise again.
I definitely agree with what you said in the article as well, though, is that they're going to have to show some significant improvement in last year's 123rd ranked defense if they want another shot at winning the Big 12, and especially if they want to have a chance to make the college football playoff.
Also, I got to rewind because I said FSU doesn't play Clemson. They do play Clemson, and they will lose to Clemson. Mark my words. Number 16, here's another surprise for you, I bet, Shane. Michigan Wolverines. Yes or no?
That is absolutely a surprise. Okay. But also, now that I actually think about it,
it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. Trust me.
You lose Jim Harbaugh. You lost J.J. McCarthy. You lost Blake Corum. And that's just 3 off the top of my head. I'm sure they lost even more than that. You lost your coach
and several players to the NFL. You have the NCAA investigation looming, going on. You have a new and improved Big Ten with better teams. And then you have an unproven starting QB. So that's a recipe for...
Yeah, that actually isn't surprising at all.
Exactly. I don't think it should be a big surprise. And on top of that,
and a coach who has only a couple
On
games
top of that, they
experience.
open up the season against Texas. Yeah. So I really don't know where the hype around Michigan is coming from, that they're going to stay a top 15, top 10 team. I see that on a lot of the preseason rankings. I mean, they still have a championship caliber defense, but their schedule just got a lot tougher, and their offense is objectively going to get worse. I just don't see it getting better.
Yeah, no, the more I sit here and think about it, it's probably a little generous.
I think it
there,
could be.
if I'm being completely honest.
I think it could be. And after Texas, they have USC in week 3. So realistically, they could find themselves at 2-3 to start the season, or 1-2 to start the season. Excuse me. And that's hitting the panic button immediately if you're at that stage. But I think that's a realistic record for them through 3 weeks of the season. I do think they at least drop one of those games. I don't think they start 3-0. I think they lose to Texas.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. Moving on to the team that they have to face this season. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, they have 3 games before USC, so they'd be like
Gotcha.
2-2, or if they lose to Texas and USC, then they'd be 2-2. Because they have Fresno State, which is probably a win, and then Arkansas State, which is probably a win. But then after 2-2, they've got
start your Big Ten schedule.
Minnesota, Washington.
Yeah. So starting the season off with 2 losses before conference plays would be terrible for them. Well, technically USC is conference play.
And then they probably could end up winning the rest of them up until Oregon, but
yeah. So number 15 is one of the teams they'll be playing, USC. I think now that I look at this list, I may have overrated USC a little. Obviously they lost Caleb Williams, but I think for a coach like Lincoln Riley, he reloads on offense every year, so I'm not worried about that. Their quarterback might be a little bit worse, maybe a lot worse. He won't be a Heisman maybe, but I think they're going to be fine on offense. It's never something you should worry about. But their defense allowed 34 points per game last year, which was like third worst in the country. So we probably could temper our expectations a little bit as they go into the Big Ten. We mentioned it earlier. They open up the season against LSU. I think they're going to win that game, which is why I have them here in the first place at 15. And then they have big conference matchups against Michigan and Penn State. I think those are winnable games. And they have the rivalry game at the end of the year against Notre Dame. But what do you think about USC? Do you think they'll get a 10-win season or somewhere close to that?
I don't know if it's going to be a 10-win season. I think they're probably around the same area last year. I'd say 8. Yeah, I'd say like 8 and 5 or 9 and 4.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
Number 14, Tennessee Volunteers, another SEC team. So they finished 10-3 last year. They will be getting a new quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. If I said that wrong, I'm sorry. But he was a 5-star recruit. And he actually started in the Citrus Bowl last year in place of Joe Milton. And he had a crazy game. They beat Iowa like 35-0. So I don't care if they were losing starters. To beat Iowa 35-0 is pretty impressive in your first game. So they'll return a really, really good edge rusher on defense as well. And I think Tennessee is one of the sleeper teams in the SEC that no one really wants to acknowledge just yet. They have to go up against NC State and Oklahoma really early on in the season. So that's going to really put them on the map. NC State starts the season ranked, so that'll be a nice little ranked win if they get it. But then the big game, who did I just say? Their big game against Oklahoma. That's the one. If they can take down Oklahoma early in the season, you got to look out for them.
Yeah, definitely agree with your analysis there. Tennessee is probably one of the most overlooked SEC teams.
Yeah, and it's just like not too long ago where they had like this super prolific offense in 2022 with Hendon Hooker, and I think that Ian Maliva is a better quarterback than him. He might take him 1 or 2 seasons because Hendon Hooker was like 24 or 25 when he had that crazy year with Tennessee, but I think Heupel's going to be able to recreate some of what he had that year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So moving on to 13, maybe one of the bigger surprises on the list, the Arizona Wildcats. They hired a new head coach, and I don't remember who they hired. They lost Jed Fish though, and I still think they have a huge chance of winning the Big 12, thus making a college football playoff. They have first-round picks in Noah Fifita and their wide receiver, and with their really, really easy schedule, I think Arizona should find at least double-digit wins again. They went 10-3 last year, and I think they will challenge Utah for the top of the Big 12.
Brent Brennan.
Gotcha.
That's the guy that they hired. But yeah, I definitely find it surprising that we have them this high. But at the same time, I definitely do think that they have a chance to win the Big 12. I don't think that they'll make the college football playoff, but I think they have a chance to compete for the Big 12 championship.
I don't think many people realize they went 10-3 last year, just because it's the last year in the Pac-12 and Arizona's Arizona. But they were very good, and I was very shocked that their quarterback Noah Fifita didn't transfer over the offseason. They must have given him a bag in the NIL for him to stay, because there had to be every school in the country wanting his services. He was an incredible player. And he's coming back for one more year before he heads to the NFL. And I think that they're going to be able to outscore just about everybody they play. Moving on to number 12. It's another team I wasn't really... You're never really sure where to put them. Penn State. They've always been consistently good in the Big Ten, but never great. So I think 12 is a pretty safe ranking for them. I think 12 also is assuming that Drew Aller makes a step forward and has a pretty good year. There's a lot of chatter and criticism about him because he was pretty terrible last year, all things considered. I know the 25 touchdowns looks pretty good, but they were not an explosive team at all if you watched them play. And they'll come into the year with Aller in his next season. Maybe they'll take a big step forward with him on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they're going to be great. I looked at their schedule, and it's kind of similar to Iowa's, where they don't have to play that many tough Big Ten teams, but they're going to have to, I think they have to play Penn State and Michigan, and if they can be perfect aside...
USC and Ohio State.
Okay. Now, if they're perfect aside from those two games, that's almost good enough to make the playoff. If they win one of those, they might sneak in.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Moving on to number 11, we have the Miami Hurricanes. So, let's talk about Miami. They seem to get this preseason hype a lot. I guess I'm buying in based on this ranking, but I've seen them actually get ranked even higher than this, in the top 10. I made sure to take them outside of my top 10 because Miami is a prove-it team for me. I'm never going to put Miami in a preseason top 10. I think that's ridiculous. Miami has really fallen short of expectations every single year since they've joined the ACC. They have no conference titles. They've had good rosters in the past. They've had a lot of good rosters in the past, and all of them have underperformed. So once again, they have a good roster this year. It's a pretty weak ACC. They're projected to win it by a lot of people. Will they actually win it? Who knows? I think they could be the best team in the ACC, but we'll have to see it to believe it. The good news is, though, they're going to get tested week 1 against my Gators. So if they go into the swamp and they take us down, I know we're not like a great team, but that's a huge test in the first week of the season. If you go into the swamp and take us down, then I'll believe that you guys at least have the fight to like have a great year. Even if you have a close loss against us, I could see that you deserve to be a ranked team at the end of the year, and that you're not a fraud. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on Miami.
I'm not a Mario Cristobal fan. I'm just gonna put that out there.
No, you are not.
Mario,
I know that for a fact.
he came into Ohio State, and I saw on Twitter he came into Ohio State and won at the on the road there, which is pretty shocking. So I'm hoping he doesn't go on the road and somehow, field a pretty good team that's call some good plays and beat us. But yeah, that game could honestly be a coin flip. It's a rivalry game. We haven't played them in a couple of years. It's the first home game against Miami in the Swamp since 2008. For in-state Florida college football fans, that's a really, really big deal, this game. For most people, they probably don't care that much, but that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on to rank 10, I have the Missouri Tigers. Missouri finished the season 11-2 last year, and they have the best receiver in the nation, who will probably be a top 10 pick in Luther Burden III. They also have one of the SEC's best quarterbacks in Brady Cook, who is not getting enough recognition. He's going to go to the NFL as well. And that offense, that duo alone, should rack them up a bunch of points and plenty of wins. And for an SEC team, I looked at their schedule. They have a pretty favorable one. Their toughest game is against Bama, but then their next two after that are Texas A&M and Oklahoma, which are, I think, for Missouri, I think those are 2 winnable games. And if they don't slip up anywhere else, I could see a 9-3 team in the SEC reaching the playoff. I don't think that's far-fetched.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Missouri is going to be an interesting one. I think they definitely make the college football playoff. Like you said, they do have a pretty favorable schedule, and their toughest games are going to come against Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Alabama. But even then, Alabama is going to be a tricky team to predict on its own. Without Nick Saban, you don't know what this team is going to be.
Yeah, those games are. Those I really shouldn't have excluded Bama. I think all 3 of those games are winnable. Bama, Missouri. I think all 3 of those games are winnable. Of them, but Missouri. They can definitely challenge any team in the SEC. They can definitely challenge any team in the SEC at this point. I think they're that. They have question marks on the defensive side of the ball. They have question marks on the defensive side of the ball. Figure those things out. So we'll have to apologize. My dog is like. Apologize. My dog is like constantly wanting to go in and out of my room constantly. But yeah, that's all I got for the Tigers. So let's move on to number 9. That's all I got for the Tigers. So let's move on to number 9. I got the Utah Utes. They are my top team in the Big 12 this season. My top team finished 8-5 this season. Without their top 5, without their starting quarterback, without Cam Rising, so they get him back. They get their tight end back in Brent Keith. They get their tight end back. Both of these guys, I think, are like 25 years old. Both of these guys, I think, are like. I think they're both like 6th or 7th year players. I think they're both like 6th or 7th year players. I said in the article, these are 2 grown men. I said in the article, these are 2 grown men. I'm being serious when I say that. I'm being serious when I say that. They've always had a really good defense under Kyle. They've always had a really good defense. I think that'll be the best defense in the conference. I think that'll be the best. Their offense is going to bounce back big time next year. Their offense is going to bounce back big time championship, and they'll enjoy their first playoff appearance ever.
You mentioned that they've been in college football for a while. Not as bad as former Ducks Tyler Shuck and what's his name? I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's like a tight end. Cam McCormick. This is going to be their 7th year in college football.
That I'm trying to figure that out. It's like I'm trying to figure that out. They maybe probably had one actual red shirt, one injury red shirt, and one COVID red shirt. One injury red shirt. I'm assuming that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's what it was. Yeah. It's weird. Feels like they cheated the system, but it's weird. You boys. Feels like they cheated the system, but you do you boys. Number 8. This is maybe the biggest surprise on the list. I have the Clemson Tigers. Maybe the biggest surprise on the list. I think Clemson Tigers bounces back this year. I think Clemson, and I think they regain control of the ACC. And I think they regain control of the ACC. Because FSU is going to take a step back, like I said. Because Miami has yet to prove anything since joining the conference. And Miami has yet to prove anything since whether they like it or not. And they're going to have to get through Clemson whether they like it or not. Their defense was great last year. And it's going to be good enough to keep them in every single game. And it's going to be good enough to keep them in every single game. But their quarterback, Cade Klubnik, who I think is a former 5-star, has just not lived up. Who I think is a former 5-star, has just not lived up to the hype at all. Dabo's had a lot of issues at quarterback. Dabo's had a lot of issues. It's kind of been very hit or miss for him. It's like you either get a generational guy in Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson, or you get a generational guy in Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson, or you get there's like kind of no in between for him. There's like kind of no in between. So you're really hoping for Klubnik to just take that big step. So you're really hoping for Klubnik. But even if he's like average, I can still see Clemson. But even if he's like average, I can still see Clemson just winning the ACC.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, Dabo's had his struggles, but I think Cade Klubnik is probably going to be one of the better quarterbacks that he's had.
What is he, a sophomore?
And really gives the Clemson Tigers a chance here. I believe, Klubnik is a sophomore.
Yeah.
He's either a sophomore or a junior.
He is a junior. Yeah, he is a junior. Yeah, heading into his junior year, he's going to have to really show it. Into his junior year, he had 19 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in his sophomore year. He had 19 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in his sophomore year. That's just not good. So that's just not. I know his offense is going to get a lot better this season. I know his offense is going to get a lot better this season. TJ Moore and Tyler Adams, I think is his name. TJ Moore and Tyler Adams, I think is his name. Are both going to be very good. I know the quarterback they have behind him, Christopher Visna. I know the quarterback they have behind him, Christopher Visna. I think Visna is good enough to maybe compete for the job this season. I think Visna is good enough to maybe compete for the job this season. So you might regardless of that too. I like Clemson's chances in the ACC. Regardless, I like Clemson's chances in the ACC. Number 7. Yeah, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Do you remember how high we were on Notre Dame last year?
I mean, every year? How high everyone is on Notre Dame?
Well, I never buy into their hype, but me and Dakota were very high on Notre Dame because of Sam Hartman. Me and Dakota were very high on Notre Dame because of Sam Hartman. So, remember? I'm high on them again this year. Because of Riley Leonard. I think because of Riley. They got the quarterback from Duke. I think they got the quarterback from Duke. And he was a really good QB. Brought him over. And he's going into his final year. He's looking to be an NFL draft pick. One thing that you have to remember about Notre Dame is they are not tied to any conference, which means that they won't get the first round bye in the playoffs. Which means that they won't get the first round byes are reserved for conference winners, which Oregon. The first round byes are reserved for conference winners, which Oregon. So, at minimum, if Oregon wants at the best, actually, if Oregon makes the playoff, they'll be the 5th seeded team. And Oregon makes the playoff, they'll be the 5th seeded team. But they'll have to aside from that, their 3 toughest games are going to be against Texas A&M. Their FSU games are going to be against Texas A&M. So not a very tough schedule. USC. So not a very tough down FSU. I think they can take down USC. I think they can take their defense is going to be lights out once again this year. Their defense is going to be lights out once again this year. So honestly, it's their schedule that really makes me high on Notre Dame this year. Honestly, it's their schedule that really Notre Dame's usually a 10-2 type of team. Notre Dame's usually a 11-1 type of team. But 11-1 or 10-2, that might be good enough for them to make the playoff. 11-1 or 10-2, that might be good enough for them to make the playoff. I think that's so. I think that's what they're gonna do. I think that's what they're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to number 6, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. Number 6, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. This could be Ole Miss's big year under Kiffin. At least it should be. It's big year under Kiffin. Shaping up to be the best roster that he's put together. They absolutely crushed it in the transfer portal. I remember making an article. They absolutely crushed it in the transfer portal. I remember making an article. Who did the best in the portal, and I ranked Ole Miss as the top team. Who did the best in the portal, and I ranked Ole Miss as the top team. They got a bunch of good. guys
They
on the
got
defensive
a
line,
bunch of
Walter
good
Nolan, Princely and
guys on the defensive line, Walter
from
Nolan,
Florida,
Princely and
and they got one more edge rusher as well.
Florida, and they got one more edge rusher as well.
A big problem in the
This
SEC.
team is going to be a big problem in the SEC.
They have to go through the ringer as well.
They have to go through the ringer.
They have the firepower to really hang with anybody.
I think they have
They do avoid Texas
really
and Bama in the regular season.
They do avoid
So
Texas and Bama in the regular season.
That'll give them more of a chance to actually
So
reach the conference title.
That'll give them more of a chance to actually.
But even
reach
if
the
they don't,
conference title.
I think like this
even
could
if they
be
don't,
one of the
I think like this
one
could
of the
be
teams in
one
the
of the-
SEC that just misses out on winning the championship.
one of the teams
the
in the
conference
SEC
title
that
but
just
sneaks
misses
in,
out on winning the
regardless.
champion. The
I think
conference
about
title that sneaks in regardless.
on this list how many
I
do
think
I have?
about I have about on this list. How many do I have?
Four.
I have
five
about
SEC teams in the top 12.
4
So
or 5 SEC teams.
I think
in the top 12.
3 or 4
So
probably end up in the playoff. I'm
think
going to say 4.
3 or
end
4
up in the
probably
playoff
end
in the
up in the
12 team.
playoff. I'm going to say 4 end up in the
and I think
playoff
Ole
in the
Miss
12
could
team.
be one of them if they finish 10 and 2.
And I think Ole Miss could be one of them
Somewhere
if
around
they
there.
finish 10 and 2. Somewhere around there.
I could see it.
See it too.
And look out for Jackson Darnold. He's another Heisman hopeful, I think.
And look out
Or
for Jackson
Dart, not
Darnold.
Jackson
He's
Darnold.
another Heisman hopeful, I think. Or Jackson Dart.
Super explosive dual threat QB.
Jackson Dart, super
Um,
explosive dual threat.
Moving on to number 5, we have Bama.
Moving on to number 5,
So,
we have Bama.
okay.
So
I think this might be a little
I
high.
think that
I'll give peace my nut, but the
Bama
time.
is going to
that
turn things around with DeBoer.
Bama
question
is
really
going
is
to
just
turn things
when they're
around
gonna
with
do it.
DeBoer. The question
gonna
really
be
is
just
just year.
when they're going to do it. Is it going to be
Mhm.
Is it going to be this year?
next year or
Is
3?
it going to be
But
next year?
I
or
don't think
3?
they lost enough.
But I don't think
Like
they
in the
lost
portal and
enough.
stuff. Like I think they have enough talent
Like in the
returning
portal and stuff. Like I think they have
to
enough talent
continue.
returning.
The biggest thing is that they didn't
to
lose Milrow.
continue.
Like
The
long
biggest
as
thing
they
is
have
that they didn't
Milrow
lose
coming
Milrow.
into this season,
Like
I had high
as long
hopes
as
for
they
them.
have Milrow
And they
coming
keep
into this
Milrow for
season,
one more
I had
season.
high hopes for them. And they keep Milrow
and
for
they
one
pair
more
him with
season.
Kalen DeBoer, which should be like a really electric
And they pair him with
combination.
Kalen DeBoer, which should be like a
So
really
I'm excited to
electric
see what he's able to
combination.
do with a quarterback like that.
So
a
I'm
lot
excited
different
to
from
see what he's
Penix,
able to do
who's
with
like a
a quarterback
pocket passing
like that. A
left-handed
lot different
QB.
from Penix.
Milrow
who's like
more of a
pocket
run
passing
first type of
left-handed
guy,
QB.
but he
Milrow
likes to
more of
bomb
a
it
run
deep as
first
well.
type of guy.
So
But he likes to bomb it deep
we'll
as
see.
well. So
Yeah, I'm really
Mhm.
excited to see what Jalen Milrow can
But
do
you-
this year.
But you also have to think that Kalen DeBoer doesn't have his offensive coordinator that he's had everywhere he's gone in Ryan Grubb. So this might be a different Kalen DeBoer
right,
that we're going to see in
he might be
Alabama.
deferring more to this
Right.
the new coordinator at.
he might be
at Bama.
deferring more to the new coordinator at Bama.
Moving on to number 4, the margins right here get really
moving on
slim. Like I think
To
this
number
top
4, the
4 is very
margins right here
interchangeable.
get really slim. Like I
But
think
we're going to
this
start
top
it
four
off
is
with
very
Ohio State.
interchangeable.
Mhm.
We're going to start it off with
On
Ohio
paper,
State.
Ohio State might just have the best team in the country.
On paper, Ohio
They
State might just
return-
have the best team.
They
in
returned the top
country.
defense.
They
defensive
return.
unit. I don't think
They
that's
returned
really
the
much
top
of a debate.
defense. Defensive
They
unit.
were
I don't think
incredible
that's really
last
much
year
of
on
a debate.
defense.
They
and
were
with
incredible
their
last year
recruiting,
on
they're just going
defense.
to have more
And
studs coming in.
With their recruiting, they're just going to have
Offensively
more
is
studs
where you
coming
should
in.
see them take the biggest
Offensively
leap forward.
is where you should see them take the biggest.
I already forgot who their
leap
quarterback's
forward.
name was last year, but he was
I already
awful.
forgot who the quarterback.
Will Howard's going to step in from Kansas
He was
State,
awful.
and he's going to
Will
lead
Howard's going to step in
that
from
really,
Kansas
really
State,
talented wide
and
receiver
he's going to
group
lead that really talented
to
wide
several
receiver
wins
group.
this season.
Um,
I think they have the
several
chance to
wins
go
this season.
undefeated in the
I
regular
think
season.
they
But
have
they
the
do
chance
have
to
to
go
play
undefeated
Oregon
in
at
the
one
regular
point in the
season.
year.
But they do have to play
I think
Oregon
that's
at
going
one
to be a
point in
classic.
the year.
That's going to be
And
the
I
big
think that's
game
gonna
to
be a
look forward
classic.
to in the
That's
Big
gonna
Ten.
be
It's no longer
the
Ohio
big
State,
game to
Michigan.
look forward
It's
to
going
in
to
the
be Ohio
Big Ten.
State,
It's no
Oregon,
longer Ohio State,
who
Michigan.
are
It's going to
the
be
top
Ohio
dogs
State,
in that
Oregon,
conference.
who are the top dogs in that conference.
I mean, Kyle
Yeah,
McCord,
McCord.
that was their quarterback in 2023.
Yep, McCord.
Yeah, he was awful. He's absolutely awful.
Yeah, and
Not
this
a very
is
good
like with this team, this might be the best team that
this
Ryan
is,
Day's
like
put
with
together.
this team, this
I
might be
don't-
the
and
best.
he's had a
team
lot,
that Ryan Day's put
but
together.
He's had a pretty
He's had a lot, but
a pretty
he's had
big
a pretty
leash as far as Ohio State coaches go.
pretty
Like
big
he's
leash
fallen
as far as
short
Ohio
to,
State coaches
Michigan
go.
now
Like he's
several
fallen
years.
short to
As a
Michigan
program,
now.
he's fallen
Several
behind
years.
Michigan. Like we have to call a spade
As
a
a
spade.
program, he's
They
fallen
haven't
behind
won a
Michigan.
championship,
Like,
and
we
Michigan
have to call a
has.
spade a spade.
However,
They haven't
you
won
know,
a
they might have
championship
cheated to get it,
Michigan
but
has.
they want it.
However, they might have cheated
Ryan
to get
Day,
it, but they
I
want
think,
it.
is on the hot seat.
Ryan
if he doesn't
Day,
at
I
the
think,
very
is
least
on the hot
uh,
seat if he doesn't
advance
at
to
the
like
very
the
least
semifinal. I think he's
On the hot
advanced to like the semifinal.
I think he's on the hot.
This team is too good to fail that bad. So
This team is too good to fail that bad. So
next up,
Yep.
at number 3, Texas Longhorns.
next up, at number 3, Texas Longhorns.
Texas is my pick.
Texas.
Personally, I do think they're a better
is
team
my
than
pick.
Georgia.
Personally,
But,
I do think they're a
could not
better
put
team
Georgia
than
at
Georgia.
1. Spoiler alert.
But I could not put Georgia.
But personally, I
at 1,
do think
spoiler alert.
Texas is the best team in that
But
conference.
personally, I do think Texas is
They
the best
couldn't have
team
joined the
in
SEC
that
at a better
conference.
time. Like, this is
They couldn't have joined the
an
SEC
elite
at a
roster
better
that
time.
Sarkisian's
This
put
is
together. They're ready to
an
go
elite
anywhere
roster that
in
Sarkisian's put
college
together.
football. They
They're
could play
ready to go
anybody.
anywhere.
And
football,
I said in
they
the
could play
article, like
anybody.
Oregon,
And
I said in the article,
they
like
retooled
their
Oregon,
roster and decided to jump, and it's just
it's
they
going to be a
retooled
lot
their
better
roster
than
and
decided
Oklahoma,
to jump,
I
and
think.
it's going to be a lot better than
and Washington,
Oklahoma,
who had to make the jump to these bigger conferences, but
and
their
Washington,
team just
who had to
isn't
make the jump
shaping
to
up
these
to
bigger
to
conferences, but
compete.
their team just isn't
With
shaping up
Quinn
to
Ewers back
compete.
at QB
With
and
Yeah.
Quinn
4
Ewers back
starters on the offensive
QB,
line, like
and,
there's no reason
4
to
starters
believe
on
they
the
shouldn't
offensive
make another
line.
run.
Like, there's no reason to believe they shouldn't make another run.
Absolutely.
Their key games are Georgia, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma.
Their key games are
And
Georgia, Texas A&M.
I think that Texas
and
A&M
Oklahoma.
game is really cool. That could end up being like a
I
bit
think
of
that
a
Texas
rivalry.
A&M game is really cool. That could end up
as
being like a
the
bit of a
years go on.
rivalry.
Kind of hoping
as
that's
the
a
years
yearly
go
game
on.
played between them.
Mhm.
Kind of hoping that's a yearly
But I
game
really
played
do like
between
that
them.
matchup.
But I really
Now,
do like that matchup.
Moving on to number 2, we
Now,
have
Moving on to
your
number 2,
Oregon Ducks.
we have your
Oregon Ducks. Yeah, I have them entering the Big Ten as the top team.
Yeah, I have them
They
entering
fell
the
just
Big Ten
short
as
of the
the top
playoff
team.
thanks to Michael Penix.
They fell just short of the
I
playoff.
remember
thanks
both
to
of us
Michael
projected
Penix.
Oregon to win the Pac-12
I
last
remember
year.
both of us projected
I was kind
Oregon
of
to
disappointed
win
that they
the Pac-12
couldn't at
last
least
year.
win one game against
I was kind of
Washington. Like I
disappointed
thought
that
they were
they
going to win
couldn't at
one,
least win one
but
game
they never
against
did.
Washington. Like I thought they were
And
going to
this
win
year, I
one.
think
They
there's
never
not
did.
going to be a team.
And this
Like,
year,
there's
I
a
think
Potentially, if
there's
they
not gonna
get
be a
past
team.
Ohio State, I think
Like,
they go
there's a
undefeated this year.
potentially if they get
That's how
past
I look at
Ohio State,
Oregon.
I think they go undefeated this year. That's how I look at Oregon.
Yeah, this is definitely the Ducks' biggest chance to, possibly their only chance over the next couple of seasons, to win the Big Ten.
I wouldn't say their only chance.
We'll see
in the
what
next
they do
couple
at QB.
seasons.
No, but it's definitely
Unlimited
gonna,
NIL money does a lot to help.
it does. But what I'm saying is, you're talking Dylan Gabriel, you're talking, the off season that the Ducks just had. Yes, they can go out and replace a lot of those guys with that NIL money, but this is by far the best roster that any coach at Oregon has ever had in the last 10 or so seasons. Yes, and I'm talking rosters that had Marcus Mariota as well.
No, that's you're starting to reach a little bit. I respect it
I'm not.
because you're a Ducks fan, but you're starting to reach a little bit.
No,
I
I'm
think-
not.
I
mean,
think
really,
Oregon.
the defense.
Like I think
It's
Oregon.
absolutely amazing.
I think
So,
Oregon.
I
I think Oregon can win the national title. So
I agree.
I don't-
I agree. Oregon's my pick. I just don't think that it's. I don't think it's the same. You can't. No, you can't.
I mean, a team with Marcus Mariota didn't win the national title.
Okay, they made the title game though.
They did.
So let's see if Oregon wins this championship. Props to them, but I still don't think that you can on paper say that this Ducks team is hands down far and away better than any Ducks team in the last 10 to 12 years.
Plus, that was more than 10 years ago. So I said the last 10.
When was
Years.
Mariota go to the draft in 2013?
when was Mariota go to the draft in 2013?
Yep. And the Ducks made the playoff in 2012. The inaugural season of the
We'll let you have
the college football playoff.
We'll let you have it.
So, there's that, Shane.
Okay.
But no,
Okay.
realistically, yeah, this is Oregon's best chance to probably win the Big Ten and
I
the
would
national,
agree with that. I think it's going to
national
be.
title.
I mean, senior
agree
year
with
Dylan
that. I think it's
Gabriel.
gonna be-
If that doesn't give you a good shot.
senior year Dylan
like,
Gabriel.
You're probably
is
not
gonna
going to
get
get.
a
If
better
that
shot
doesn't
than
give you a
that.
good
I do
shot.
agree. Like,
But,
you're probably not going to get a better
moving on to
shot.
number 1.
I do agree.
Very predictable.
But,
Georgia Bulldogs. Moving on to number 1. Very predictable Georgia Bulldogs. They got the best
Mhm.
quarterback in the nation potentially next year. They got the best quarterback in the nation potentially next defense. Or one of the best defenses. I think Ohio State probably the best defense, or one of the best defenses. They have everything you need to win their third national championship in 4 years. The one thing that's going to be stopping them is a loaded SEC. 4 years. The one thing that's going to be stopping them is a loaded SEC. Here's the hoping that they slip up and end up losing a couple games. Here's the hoping that they don't make the conference championship and end up losing a couple games and don't make the conference championship. But you can't really count Georgia out. You can't really count Georgia out.
No.
They're just too good. I'm trying to look at their schedule right now before we go. Yes. I'm trying to look at their schedule right now. They do open up the season against Clemson. Yes. So that's they do open up the season against Clemson. There's a ton of really good games. That's the big game on August 31st. More than there's a ton of really good games to open up the year, and they could slip up early in the season. Their first 4 weeks, I'll read them off to you. Early in the season, Clemson. Their first 4 weeks, I'll read them off to you. Home game against Tennessee Tech. Clemson and neutral site away game at Kentucky. Home game against Tennessee Tech at Bama. Away game at Kentucky, and then an away game at Bama. So what do we project them to be?
Bama,
what do we
week
project
4?
them to be record-wise through those?
That's a trap game.
What do we project them to be record-wise through those 4 games?
I think it'll be 3-1. I think Bama might get them.
Either Bama or Clemson get them. I agree. I think
if any of them are going to get them, Bama.
But I think Clemson could get rattled early on. Obviously, Bama has the best chance to get rattled early on at home. Obviously, Bama has the best chance. They're going to want to get their revenge at home. They're going to want to get their revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more I look at Georgia's schedule, it's not going to be easy for them. Yeah. The more I look at Georgia's schedule, aside from those games I mentioned, you obviously have Florida. They have to play Texas and those games I mentioned, you obviously have Florida. They have to play Texas and Ole Miss though. Yeah. And Tennessee. So I see 2 losses. Yeah. I see 2 losses on
that's just the regular season too. So
I don't think a single team in the SEC goes undefeated. If you do, I don't think a single team might be the best team in college football history. With that might be the best team in college football history. With the schedules that they have. Yeah, I'd be shocked to see any undefeated teams in the Power 5 this year. Yeah, I'd be shocked to see how it's looking. Any undefeated teams in the Power 5 this year. Yeah, how it's looking.
Yeah. It's going to be tough.
Outside of the Big Ten and the SEC, it could be easier. Outside of the Big Ten, but in those 2 conferences, I really don't think it's going to happen. I mean, you have to be a seriously dominant team. I really don't think it's an all-time great team. I mean, you have to be a seriously dominant team to go perfect in those conferences. An all-time great team to go perfect in those conferences. But yeah, that finishes up the list.
pretty solid list. Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the better
for this season.
Rankings.
For this season.
I know we already gave our prediction. Also, I stand corrected. It was 2014 that the Ducks made the national title.
Interesting.
That's still 10 years.
That's in the 10 years.
Yes, you said in 10 in the last 10 years. 10 years is included.
The last 9.
So, interesting.
We'll see. I mean, if they win the championship, then you have to say it was the best roster in the last 10 years. So,
just because you win a title doesn't mean you're better than
we'll measure it by
roster. I think that the Cam Newton Auburn team could beat most of the college football teams today.
I don't know. That Auburn team was carried by Cam Newton. I don't know. I mean, carried.
I don't know about that.
Auburn team was carried by Cam Newton. I think they could be beat most teams. I don't think they.
Still was top team.
He was incredible.
College Cam Newton was nuts.
He would have been a Gator if he didn't steal a laptop.
And
I'm not saying they'd win the title, but I'm saying I think they would compete in this year.
I think Auburn with Cam Newton in the playoff.
So
that 2014 Oregon team was carried by Marcus Mariota and his 50 touchdowns, which is unseen in college football today. Freaking Super Mariota.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Anyways.
But anyways, that's going to do it. I mean, you've already heard all of our picks. We're going with Oregon across the board.
I think I am, yeah. My picks are Oregon and Texas.
I
think it's Oregon and Texas is my national championship game. I haven't decided a winner yet.
Texas is my national
But those are the two I have in it.
I haven't decided a winner yet.
Who does Oregon play? Let me know. Who
I
does
will
Oregon
say
play
one
in the national
thing,
championship?
not
Who does Oregon play?
surprising.
Let me know. Who does Oregon play in the national championship?
Oregon will probably Texas, my guess.
Yep.
Depending on seeding, depending on where placement is.
Texas or Georgia.
Texas
But my
or
best
Georgia.
guess would be Texas.
Texas or Georgia.
Yeah. I will note, not necessarily a surprise, but I noticed that UW, rightfully so, is now out of the top 25. You lose almost every single important piece on your offense. Some great pieces on your defense. Your head coach, your legendary offensive
I like the
coordinator.
coach that they. Yeah, I like the coach that they
Major,
got.
major
Arizona's
steps
head
backwards.
coach Jed Fish.
Yeah, I like the coach that they got. They got
won.
Arizona's head
He's
coach,
proven
Jed
it,
Fish.
that's going to be
He's won.
a multi-year
He's
rebuild.
proven it,
for sure. That's going to be a multi-year rebuild. For sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I just wanted to point that out. I noticed it.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for us here on this episode of Tailgate Discussions. Shane, thanks for joining us here on
Yes, sir.
the episode. If you want to follow us for more content, follow us on Twitter at Tailgate Discuss. Also subscribe to the Phantom
See you.
Sports YouTube account.